Okay, so over the last 2 days, we introduced a new concept that we're going to be looking at to help make sense of the characters that we're reading and sort of understand who they are and what makes them tick. And so the things that we kind of laid out to give us a baseline of what makes a person themselves is called the rings of identity. So we took some notes on that. We're going to go through that here real quickly. Just sorry about that. Just kind of pulling it up. Here we go. So the rings of identity are made up of 8 different categories, as you can see on the screen. We'll go through and kind of talk about what those look like. I'm going to go through kind of some of the definitions. There'll be some notes. I would recommend taking notes on these as I go through this. If you need to, you can pause the video as it's going through while you're taking the notes in case I move too fast. And then we'll kind of talk about what to do at the end. So the first category in the rings of identity is ability. All right, so ability, as you can see, can be split up into 2 main categories. It can deal with physical ability and mental ability. So when we talk about physical ability and sort of what makes a person who they are and their physical ability, it can refer to actions like walking, running, jumping, reaching, seeing, hearing, and other physical tasks. So, I mean, some people, like people walk differently. They have different like stride lengths to gauge their walk. Some people walk really slow and sort of like very casual, and other people walk sort of like they're on a mission all the time. Some people are really fast or really good at jumping. Other people maybe not so much. Seeing, you know, I wear glasses or I wear contacts most of the time, but that's something that is part of who I am. If you look at my driver's license, it says that I need something to help me see. Otherwise, like I'm breaking the law. So I need some sort of thing that's going to help my vision. If people need to wear a hearing aid or other things like that, that makes up your physical ability. So when we read the story, sometimes a dream needs a push. The main character, you know, he was able to walk at one point, but then after a car accident, he was in a wheelchair. That's part of his physical ability. The other part of ability is mental ability. Mental ability refers to your brain and things like your ability to solve problems or how you balance your emotions, the way you keep memories and you remember things, learning new ideas and kind of other mental tasks. Because again, that sometimes is broken. Some people are just good at solving problems in general. Other times, maybe people, you know, maybe they really struggle at solving problems like math problems or just getting math problems in class. Maybe you just really struggle with that. But then if you like have them start working with their hands a little bit more, they might be really good at working with engines or building things and like making measurements, like, and so they're able to solve those problems because our minds are sort of wired differently. Same way, like with how you balance your emotions, and when you're stressed, people deal with those things in different ways. Your ability to remember, like sometimes people just have a great memory and they remember everything. Other times people might remember very specific things. And those are just kind of, again, things that make up your ability and who you are in that sense. Age is a pretty easy one. It refers to how old a person is. So we can be very specific and we can say your age. You know, I'm 36. You might be 14 or 15 or 16. That's your age. But also a lot of times we put them into categories like infant or baby. A lot of times infants or babies, if you recall, are like we get their age, and like my sister-in-law will say that her son is, you know, 16 months. You know, they'll kind of go by months up until a certain point. So that's for infants or babies. Then you have toddler, you have child or kid, preteen. Teenager is the easiest one because you have to be between the ages of 13 and 19 really to be a teenager, because they say teen in the word. You have young adult, and then you have adult or middle aged, which is sort of the category I fall in. And then you have elderly or old. And again, those have a little more room for variation, because like if I say someone's old, my idea of someone being old is going to be like in their 60s or 70s, but your idea of someone old might be painfully me, right? So like that's just sort of what can make up a person, is how old they are. Gender refers to how a person identifies themselves, and often that involves the words boy or girl. You know, traditionally, stereotypically, that's sort of how it worked. Thankfully, like over the years, we've learned that gender is a lot more than what maybe it was looked at when I was young, or when people older than me were young. It's more than girls just wearing pink dresses and boys playing with blue trucks. A lot of times it's a scale, and most people don't fall just completely on one end or the other. They fall kind of in the middle. So that's why when you kind of look at this here, you have male, you have female, you have non-binary. A lot of people will fall kind of in like these categories here or here, because like it's not many people are completely all the way one way or the other. And that's just sort of how we work, you know, and that's just also an important thing that makes you who you are and makes other people who they are. Family structure refers to how your family's made up, because that definitely has an impact on who you are. So things to consider, like, do you have one mom and one dad? Do you have two moms, two dads? Do you have a single parent household? Do you have a guardian? Are your parents divorced? Are they separated? Are they still married? Have they ever been married? I mean, those are things to consider. Do you have step parents or step siblings? If you have siblings, like, where do you fall as far as, are you the oldest to the youngest? Are you the middle? I'm the middle child of three. Are you an only child? That's also something to consider. Are there other family members that you live with, like a grandparent that lives at home, or an aunt or uncle, cousins, something like that? Or maybe it's not even like necessarily a family member, but it's like maybe you have a friend who lives with you who is like a family member. How big is your extended family, and how close are you? So how big is your extended family? Like my wife, her mom has 11 siblings, which means that she has like 46 cousins. So that's a really large extended family. Whereas me, I have like, 7 cousins on each side. So it's a lot smaller. But these are all things that they make up how you view the world, and like the things that are around you. Like my first best friend in my life was one of my cousins. Yeah. And that's just kind of one of those things that's part of my family structure too. So that's something to consider when you're looking at one's identity. Race and ethnicity. So race and ethnicity a lot of times get sort of lumped together, or sometimes confused that they're interchangeable, and they're not. They are a little bit different. So race refers to common physical characteristics within a group, such as skin color, hair texture, eye shape. Some categories might be American Indian or Indigenous, Asian, Black or African American, Hispanic or Latino, or white. Like that's what race is. Ethnicity refers to a group based on a common nationality or shared cultural traditions, like German or Puerto Rican. So like when I fill out forms and it asks for race, like I sort of fill in the bubble that says white or Caucasian, but my ethnicity is made up of, I'm part German, part Irish, part Welsh, and so those are different things that make up me based on kind of my family's background and where my family came from. But also then when you look at the cultural traditions too, like some families really take a lot of pride in some of their background. They might not take pride in like everything, but maybe they heavily celebrate their German heritage. Or like my grandpa always used to make corned beef and cabbage on St. Patrick's Day, because that was one thing that he really liked about his Irish heritage. So like that's sort of how they differ a little bit, but they still absolutely make up who you are. Religion. Religion refers to both belonging and not belonging to an organized faith group that believes in a higher power. So, whether you're religious or not, this still falls under this category. So a lot of common religions include Christianity, which is like a lot of different things. Like I grew up Lutheran, I had friends who grew up Catholic, Protestant, Methodist. Those are all Christian. So it's under kind of that same umbrella. But then there's also Judaism, Hinduism, Islam, Buddhism, and Sikhism. And a lot of times they have some similarities, but they also have some differences. They have different beliefs that are in place, and they study different texts that kind of go behind it. But there is some sort of belief system there. Someone who does not belong to an organized religion may sometimes describe themselves as either agnostic or atheist. Agnostic is that you might believe that there is a higher power, or maybe there's a God, but you don't know, but you're not going to say that there's not, right? So you believe in something, but you don't know what. Whereas atheist, a lot of times is like, I don't believe that there is necessarily God or anything. A lot of times they're more science-based, believing in the Big Bang and evolution, kind of just looking really at the concrete, like looking at evidence and stuff like that. So that's kind of the difference there, but it's still, it changes, the way you think about things, the way you approach life. It changes maybe who you surround yourselves with, the different activities that you do. All those things can kind of, again, affect who you become in this world. And that's, part of what religion is. Sexual orientation. Sexual orientation refers to whom a person is attracted to or who they feel drawn to romantically. So we talked about, I mentioned gender. Sexual orientation is also like gender in that it's there's a spectrum, right? It's not, some people are completely 100% heterosexual. Some people are completely 100% homosexual. And a lot of times people fall sort of kind of in between there sometimes too, where they might be attracted in different ways to different people regardless of their gender identity. And so I think this is actually a really good image that kind of helps you show that it's not always just completely this or this, right? And socioeconomic status. That refers to how much money a person or family has, and it's usually divided into classes. So you see the image, it has upper, middle, working, and lower class, but it also takes into account not just your income, but your profession. It takes into account your level of education. Those are all things that kind of play into that socioeconomic status. So like growing up, I lived on a dairy farm. My mom was a part-time worker at Fleet Farm. You know, we had food stamps until my brother was 18 and graduated from high school. So we were definitely kind of in that lower class kind of here, which affects who I am today, like as far as like how I view money and how I budget money and how I maybe, you know, appreciate and understand some of the things that I have now, that I do have, you know, a little bit more than I did back then. And I think a lot of that comes down to, you know, what you're used to and what you maybe have in your life. It kind of shows some of those different things. So that's what makes up the rings of identity, those 8 categories. So, you know, as you're kind of going through that and as we're reading about books, we're going to talk about like what we think about these characters. And we'll come back to these things pretty often to give us a picture of who those characters are. Then in your journal, I want you to write briefly about your rings of identity. You don't have to talk about all of them because that would be a really long journal entry, but I would like you to think about writing about 2 of them, like what makes up your family structure or you know, your religion or something like that. I want you to pick 2 of them that you feel comfortable talking about. Some questions to consider. You don't have to answer all these, but some questions to consider that might help you. You can think about which rings of identity do you think are most or least important to you? So like which ones, like if you think about like who you are as a person, some people, oh, my light just turned off. That's all right, we'll keep going. Some people, their religion is a big part of who they are, and other people it's not that big. And so that could be something that you might talk about. Which ones do you think other people think about most when they're looking at you? And then personally, which ones might you notice the most about someone else? You know, just what are some of those things? So just kind of write about that in your journal for a little bit. So that does it for the rings of identity. I hope that helped you out. If you have any questions, please let me know. All right, bye.